Okay, gracias, Marcos. It's a personal, it's a very particular pleasure to be here. I'm Spanish. I come from this part of the world, but I have been living 15 years far from here, so I'm very pleased to come back and have some pan tumaca in the morning and enjoy the the landscapes of Sevilla. Really nice place. So I'm going to talk about the human-megafauna conflicts. A few disclaimers. I don't like to talk after Mauro. I always like his presentations. It's never comfortable talking after him. I'm not going to be very quantitative. I just thought, it was a good chance to think, and I just put some ideas on the presentation. So I'm not going to come with kind of conclusions or with finished things. I want to just tend to talk about things that bother me or that interest me when it comes to human-megafauna conflicts. And I study elephants, so most of my work has to do with Asian elephants. I have been working with elephants in Sri Lanka, in Myanmar, and currently mainly in Malaysia, but I work throughout the region. And normally I stand by elephants, so I like elephants. I'm very supportive of elephants, but today is a bit different day, It has been a difficult day. So it was a tough morning, so then, for American friends here, don't worry. It's bad, but I'm sure we'll move on. So then I want to take you to a little trip to Malaysia, to the forest where we work. Then I will discuss why human-megafauna conflicts are normal, and we have to expect them. They want to happen. And then some reasons why we're doing so poorly when it comes to the mitigation of these conflicts or moving from conflict into coexistence. So this is deep Telecard forest in Peninsular Malaysia. Has any one of you been in Malaysia or Southeast Asia? So then the forests are, I guess you're familiar with the forest. They're dominated by the deep Telecard trees. They produce very little fruit, very little edible fodder. So then basically we have very low density of mammals and animals in general. But they're really beautiful forests, and it's really enjoyable to walk around this forest. And we have some elephants here. We have a lot of megafauna. You saw some images from Mauro, for example, that we have elephants, tigers, several rhino species. We have several wild cattle species. We have a lot of megafauna in this part of the world at very low densities and actually very constrained ranges. So here we have one elephant. We can call him Awang. And he was born in this tropical rainforest. There is little food. He prefers bamboos and gingers and palms. Palms are particularly very good food. But has to move a lot to find the food. That's why it's so good that this person sits, because there is no good place to find food. There are no grasslands. It's a continuous forest, a continuous forest of very little food. And Awan knows very well his forest. He moves around. He knows all the elephants in the place. He knows where to find mangoes when the mango season. He knows where to find durian when the durian is fruiting. But then one day machines come, there's a lot of noise, and then the landscape suddenly changes, as it has changed a lot in the last 50, 60 years. Peninsular Malaysia in the 1940s was more than 80% forest, and nowadays it's less than 40%. So it has been a drastic change in the landscape. So these things happen. When these things happen, we have the forest is suddenly replaced by palms, by oil palm, or by rubber, or by acacia. And when this happens, do people kill the elephants? Do people kill Awan to plant the rubber or the oil palm? Normally they don't. So then what happens is that animals move to the neighboring forest. So then we pass from having a kind of a carrying capacity of elephants in this place, suddenly have double density of elephants, or higher density than normal here, in a place that has very little food resources. But what is replacing the forest? It's this very tasty, very appealing oil palm, which is the favorite food of Awang. And not only is very tasty food, it's also very well organized. If you're an elephant and you have a place like this, you just do 2 steps, pick one palm. It's very well planned. It's very well done for elephants. Elephants tend to love these places. And as you can see, there is no barrier. Okay, so then people who planted this oil palm were very, very optimistic. They thought, I will just plant this oil palm and I will hope that nothing happens. I guess some of you might have a Ferrari or something like that, or one of these big You have one alloy. So when you go to the center of Sevilla, you probably don't park your Ferrari. You keep the doors open with the keys in the contact, right? So then this is what we're doing with these landscapes. We're planting the favorite food of these animals and then hoping that they will not come. And you will be surprised how many people get surprised when elephants come and eat the palms. So of course elephants come and then they can make massive damage. In one night they can really cause massive economic impact. And people are not happy about this. So then one day when one comes close to one village, it's being captured. So then the wildlife department will come and then tranquilize the elephant, chain to a tree. Everyone will come and see the elephant because they like to see elephants and they like these things to happen when there is some response to protect the crops. So then the wildlife authorities will use trained elephants to move the wild one, put into a truck. They will drive the elephant far from the native home range into a forest that is a continuous forest where there are no crops, there are no people, and release, hoping that the elephant will be happy and will live there forever. We deploy GPS collars on these kind of elephants. We have tagged around 30 elephants that have been translocated so far. And this is an example of one elephant. So this is where the elephant was captured in Kampong Baung. This is where the elephant was released. This is a big lake. So then the elephant cannot move around here and some scale here. After being released, this is what the elephant did. Didn't take very long to find the way back home. And this is just one example of several. Not all the elephants know how to go back home. We don't know how they go back home. You know, if any one of you works in navigation, I will be very keen on having some discussions. In this case, it's not very far away, so I suspect that the elephant probably knew the place already because they have a kind of extended home range when they're looking for girls. But somehow the elephant just came back to the same home range, kept on doing the same thing as he was doing before, and eventually died because it was tried to be captured again and be translocated. There was an overdose. So it's a very common story in this place. Okay, so then if you're an elephant, this is your life. You spend your life looking for food. When you find food and you like the food that you find, suddenly you find yourself in trouble because people don't like what you're doing and you're being harassed. I could tell all the stories. This is another of our elephants. This is called Sungai Kedah. This elephant, as you can see, is missing one tusk. Also, you can see it has a GPS collar. This elephant was driven over by a car the night before because this elephant is attracted by the grasses that live around the road. So he lives in a very big continuous forest. It's a big forest complex with one road in the middle, and this elephant likes to spend most of his time by the road. So it's against what we expected. We thought that this elephant would be avoiding the road because it's noisy, it is dangerous, but no, it's full of food. And then also it's very prone to accidents and poaching. Some of our elephants have been poached because they are so visible from the road. So we have a little ecological thing there. If we go to other places, this is in Sri Lanka. I worked 5 years in Sri Lanka. I never saw one adult male without bullet marks in the body. So in every single male, you can count the shots. And there was one guy who was translocated 3 times. He went back a long way and then eventually died. And in the post-mortem, they found 25 kilograms of bullet material, of lead in the body. 25 kilograms, just one shot at a time. So then this guy spent all his life waiting until evening. Then in the evening, we'll go next to the paddy field, wait until it's really dark, and probably join with a gang of other males, and then enter into the paddy field until they were shot out, and this was the daily routine. Okay, so then this is the life of a megafauna, of a big animal like an elephant in a forest or in a landscape in Asia. So then just some brief introduction to human-wildlife conflicts. These are interactions in which there is some negative impact either for people or people's resources or wildlife and wildlife habitat. Just to make clear, when we talk about human-wildlife conflict, we don't talk about a human-cockroach conflict as a human-wildlife conflict, unless if you try to publish a paper on human-cockroach conflict in biological conservation, probably you will not be very successful because we focus mainly on animals of conservation concern. Okay, we kill cockroaches without any major problem. It is part of our control of wild animals. So then, when we talk about a human-wildlife conflict, we'll focus on animals that, on the one hand, we want to conserve. They have some value. They are really important for us in a way. But at the same time, they are creating trouble. So then how do we manage this situation in which you cannot just get rid of the animals, as we do with some others? Megafauna, I will not go into definitions. I think that is the purpose of this workshop. I very much like the idea of animals that are they are not food. So then elephants might be killed sometimes, but lions don't control the population. So then really they are bottom-up control. They are not top-down control. Deer, they have this sandwich of the amount of food they can find and how much they are food for someone else. But elephants, rhinos, lions, they are not being killed by other animals, either as food or as a result of kind of carnivore to carnivore competition, which I think also plays a role there. And when we talk about human-wildlife conflict, if you look at the literature, and I didn't do any proper search, this is just looking at Google images, human-wildlife conflict, most of what you see is elephants, tigers, lion. It's everything megafauna because they are very prominent. They are the most kind of a common subject on current human-wildlife conflict studies. So then, when we talk about a human-wildlife conflict, we're often talking about megafauna. And there are very good reasons why megafauna are so prone to conflict. So then there's nothing very new. I guess you know all these things, but I will just review briefly. First, megafauna are super generalist. Just think about the distribution range of elephants or tigers or leopards. So then in Africa, African elephants, they used to cover most of the continent. They can live in very arid areas, in very wet tropical rainforests, in very cool environments, in very hot environments. They are adaptable, they are very flexible in the ecology. So that also means that they can eat many different things. Animals like forest elephants probably have the most diverse of the herbivore diets. In Congo, Steve Blake estimates that the elephants consume about 500 plant species. But if you go somewhere else, the same species will consume several hundred species, different species, but in any place they have this very, very wide ecological breadth. Okay? So then when it comes to look at the tigers' distribution range, they used to live at very high altitude, again, in a very, very wide range of ecological environments. So that means that there are many ways in which they can compete with people. They can eat, for example, elephants eat all the crops that we produce for food and all the crops we produce for animal food. All of them are attractive for elephants. Of course, they eat a lot, so then you know that there is a correlation between body size and daily mass intake. If you see elephants spend about 17, 18 hours a day just eating. They are eating monsters. They escape predation by becoming so big, but then they became slaves or food. So all an elephant has to do in the life is just find food and keep on feeding. Sometimes observing elephants can be very boring because they are just eating for hours and hours and hours and hours, and just they don't do anything else, and they defecate a lot. So then an elephant can defecate again another 15, 20 times in a day, several kilograms of nutrients put in a place. So then they really need to find food. That is all they do. Most of other herbivores will have to compensate finding food and not being eaten. In this case, only about finding food. They have very big special requirements to find all this food. They will need big areas. So then a family of elephants, if we're talking about maybe 150 kilograms per individual, 150 kilograms of plant material per individual day, just imagine a group of 10 elephants moving around. They need to really move over big areas, not to consume all the food they have in the area. And we know that they will have very big home ranges. And we know that there are very few places left where you have wilderness, places without people. So then you saw probably this paper by Watson et al., I think it's in Current Biology this year, in which they describe the current status of a wilderness. And if you compare with the distribution of megafauna, you will see that there is a negative correlation between wilderness and megafauna. Basically, wilderness are areas with very low productivity. They are not very good places for megafauna to live. And we have very high concentration of megafauna in places where there are many, many people. Particularly Asia, we have very high numbers of people living with very high numbers of big animals. So then, where to live? People people want to conserve elephants, people want to conserve tigers, but where to live far from people? There is no more any far from people. In Asia, there are very few places where a tiger can have a home range without touching someone's village, being close to people. These animals also, they are not food, so then they are not they're not very good at measuring risk. They don't have much fear. I spent one summer in this village in Sri Lanka, so you can see this house was attacked by an elephant because they keep the rice here, and the elephants can smell the rice and then just come and break the house and eat the rice. But I always thought this must be maladaptive. I don't think that this is really producing enough energy to be worth for the elephant. So when the elephant does this, people are inside the home. So then what happens is in a matter of a few seconds or 1 minute or two, you have many people chasing the elephant with guns and shooting the elephant. And the elephant has to run away, probably will be shot, will be infected. I don't think that the amount of energy they get from the rice compensate for all the stress and all the problem that they go through. But I think it's just they are not good at assessing the risk. They are an elephant. If you are an elephant, you are not used to be afraid of anything. You do what you think is right, and is often not very good idea. In this summer, so in this village, there were 400 houses. In this summer, elephants destroyed 22 houses. So then about more than 5% of them were destroyed. Some of them houses like this. People are sleeping and suddenly, what's going on? Well, what's going on is the elephant is hungry and you have rice in your home, and sometimes the houses look, they are really brought down. And also, some of these guys are very intelligent. I took this photo a couple of weeks ago in Thailand. We're having a chat with people this is a human-elephant conflict patrol team, and they were explaining how in the last 10 years they have been escalating using this kind of arms race, using different tools to deter elephants. So they began with little nosemakers, and elephants left. After a few months, the nosemaker doesn't work. Then they begin with some kind of light. They use CD-ROMs with a torch, and it works, but everything lasts a few months or 1 year or 2 years before elephants learn the trick and stop being deterred by these things. And I really like, there are several images of elephants, jumping over fences. They're very intelligent. They know how to cope with these things, so then this makes the mitigation or living with them more difficult. And finally, we humans overlap a lot with megafauna. So we have a megafauna. I guess some of you might know this megafauna individual eating megafauna fruit, durian. Have you eaten durian? I mean, in a conference about megafauna, it's wrong not to have eaten durian. Okay, you need to try durian. It is something that Alfred Wallace said that it was worth a trip to the east. So then it's really worth going to Southeast Asia just to try the durian. This is the for me is the idea of a megafauna fruit. This has this pungent smell, these big seeds, this highly nutritious flesh that will attract the megafauna. And I took this photo yesterday somewhere in Sevilla, and I could see some meat hanging there, very appealing for big carnivores, I guess. And finally, megafauna are care specialists. So then again, they are not food. They are not used to having to compensate for loss of individuals. An elephant will have a gestation of 22 months. So then the period between births will be like 4 or 5 years. They don't cope very well with having predators. Okay, until this group of very intelligent, highly organized hunters appear, they were not used to be killed. So then there are good reasons why megafauna get in conflict, and then we need to expect conflict. It has been always like this, and we will not be able to solve the conflict as such. But now I want to talk a little bit about the reasons why we are doing so bad in human megafauna conflict mitigation, and these are not biological issues, so then I don't know how much is the scope of this workshop to think beyond the biology and thinking about the role of humans in dealing with ecosystems. So then, first, people have very strong feeling for megafauna. The perceptions are, for example, people fear these kind of animals. Guys from Spain, I guess you go to the forest and you are not afraid when you go to the forest. How many of you feel fear when you go to the forest? So when I started to work in Sri Lanka, I was saying, okay, let's go at night. It's very cool. And I was going, and my team was shaking. I said, oh, guys, well, I mean, these were very strong men, people who who know how to cope with dangerous situations. I was a student from Europe, and my team was really having fear to go to the forest. I had to learn to be fearful. I didn't have that feeling. It's something that in Spain you go to hike at night, there is nothing wrong unless you fall or you do something silly. But it is really fearful to be around animals that eat you. So then when you have tigers or elephants around, it is a very strong emotion and is very much part of people's normal life. But also people love these animals. So this is Harimau Malaysia. This is kind of the national football team in Malaysia. It's a tiger. So many things are tigers or elephants. People also love elephants. I was very surprised in Sri Lanka to see how people love elephants in a way that I had never seen in the West. So then we love cats or dogs or horses that we have a name, have a history, have a personality. But people in many countries in Asia, they love elephants that they have never seen. Just they love the idea of the elephant, which is something that is very surprising. So then there are a lot of strong emotions involved with these animals. People get married to crocodiles in places like Papua New Guinea or in Indonesia. All these things really, they are not just animals, they are humans. Elephants are humans in many cultures because they are as important as people in deciding your lifestyle. So then we need to understand the role that these guys play in culture, but also there are things like the risk perception is very different to perceive the risk of the damage produced by rodents in your crops, which is happening every day, a small amount, and you don't see it, and you don't have any fear, compared with the damage produced by elephants that come to your place and they can destroy your whole crop for this season in one night. So then it is not something objective. There is a lot of subjective emotional component in the way that people deal with these animals. Tolerance is a very important thing. These are Chewon people. We work with them in Peninsular Malaysia. Something that I was very impressed when I was living with them, not living, but doing some field work with them, is that the lifestyle is designed to avoid human-wildlife conflict. You know, they live in a place that elephants cannot reach. They don't have dogs, because anyone who lives near tigers must know that dogs are tiger food. You don't want to have tiger food moving around, because they don't hunt deer. Because if you hunt the deer, the tiger will be hungry. So they only hunt animals that live in the trees. So they focus mainly on arboreal animals. The number of adaptations, the agriculture is never by the houses, and what they do is they cultivate fruits, which is very good for wildlife because they increase the concentration of fruits in the forest. So they have a traditional lifestyle that was completely designed to avoid conflict with elephants and tigers. But we have lost the tolerance. There is a historian working on human-wildlife conflicts in Southeast Asia. He's recording quite surprising numbers about the number of people killed by tigers in the 17th, 18th century, like by the thousands in Vietnam or Cambodia. And now we cannot tolerate 15, 20 people being killed in a country in a year. But it used to be really common until a few generations ago. So nowadays, like this T-shirt, zero tolerance, we have lost the tolerance. I think there's someone talking today from WWF. Yeah. So then you see this campaign, the tigers, they want to double the population of tigers. That means in Malaysia they want to have around 1,000 tigers by very soon. But people don't think if you have 1,000 tigers, they will kill 5 people per year. Is that something you're willing to compromise? Because you want to have tigers, but the tigers will be around and will be in the landscape. So nowadays, whenever tigers come into close contact with people, they are being removed from the wild because people don't accept tigers being around. So we cannot have tigers if we are not willing to have conflict. And how much tolerance is fine? Are you okay to think that, I don't know, that maybe lynx become very aggressive and kill 10 people, 10 children per year in Spain? I think it's something that people feel very uncomfortable, but when you change the topic into motorbikes, in Southeast Asia people drive motorbikes like crazy, and they die by the thousands. No one thinks about banning motorbikes. It's okay to die in a motorbike accident, but being eaten by a tiger is something that people are not willing to accept. Even people, students of conservation, they feel very uncomfortable with the idea of knowing that people will be eaten by tigers. And again, they can tolerate the idea of people being killed by stupid drivers. And it's very interesting. And something that I'm also very interested in is that when we talk about carrying capacity, We often think about food. I always hear like, oh, poor elephants, they don't have food in the forest, so they have to come from the forest to eat our crops. I tend to disagree. In most cases, I think it's not a matter of lack of food. I think it's that just our crops are so much better. So we have increased the carrying capacity of megafauna so many times. I always think of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, about 3,000 years ago, was a continuous forest, either dry or wet forest. And probably there will be around 2,500 elephants in the country. That is the natural carrying capacity in the country. Then humans came from northern India, and they brought agriculture, they cleared the forest, they brought water into a very dry area, and probably we increased tenfold the carrying capacity of elephants. So with human arrival, probably we passed from 2,000 to 20,000 elephants. Okay, so we improve the landscape for these kind of guys. But then, of course, when the conflict becomes high, there is another carrying capacity, it's the tolerance carrying capacity. So this is it's a newly planted oil palm plantation. You don't see here, but these little shades, these are oil palms. And these are places where there are elephants. These are 2 forest reserves, and this is mature oil palm. This is paradise for elephants. Forest is really bad. If you're a mega herbivore, living in primary rainforest is not a very good place to be. But living here with so much grassland and so much kind of early succession plants, is full of food, is really, really a great place to be. So then, moving on, something also I think is very interesting is whose responsibility to mitigate the conflict. Do you know this place? Sounds familiar, some of you? Okay. So the Plaza España in Sevilla, and this apparently sometimes it snows in Sevilla. That would be nice. So then I always think about, when I talk to people in Asia, people don't want to have conflict. So then when you ask who is responsible of mitigating the conflict, the answer depends a lot in the country, but in most countries is the government. The elephants belong to the government. In some countries, not even the government. It's one particular part of the government, like the state government, not the federal government, or the opposite, the federal government, not the state government. So the elephants belong to someone who is responsible to mitigate the conflict. But what I'm trying to tell to people is that elephants are like winter. It's part of the landscape. It's part of nature. It's part of the system. I'm sure in Sevilla, when you have snow, you don't call to the government and say, hey, can you please stop this snow? It's very annoying and my tomatoes are freezing and I'm not happy about that. You can try. You will not be taken very seriously. But when it comes to human-wildlife conflict, people do that. People go into an elephant landscape and then they plant the plantation and they hope that elephants will not come and feed on the crops. So they want elephants being removed from that area, and that creates a vacuum because elephants or tigers, whatever, they keep on coming, and then the area affected by this development is huge. So we are trying to spread the responsibility away from the government, particularly the conservation agency, into the development agency, into the farmers, into people like me who live in the city, and I don't experience any human-tiger conflict, and I want to have tigers, and I will have to place some responsibility into corporations to try to spread the responsibility across the society. And it's easy to say, and in this room you probably will agree that makes sense, but when you go to a corporation or you go to the agency that develops the roads or the agricultural agency to tell them they are responsible for all these things is very difficult because they outsource everything to the small agency that does conservation, that has little resources, that they don't matter. They're just these guys who do the elephant, and these guys have no power. They have no influence. They have no capacity. So then, how can we make clear that elephants are like winter? Elephants belong to the landscape, are part of the system. You want to develop the landscape. You need to deal with this. Don't complain. There is no complaint line for these things. And something very important when we talk about human megafauna conflict mitigation, in the definition that I said earlier was about negative impact on people or wildlife. But as far as I know, all the mitigation that is being done anywhere in the world, particularly in the tropical, in tropical countries, is always to mitigate the damage on people. Okay, so we never care about the mitigating the conflict on the wildlife. And things like this, when the government moves elephants in most of the elephant range in Asia, they know it's not going to work. They know this elephant probably was not doing much damage. Something happened. They need to get one elephant. They're doing for these people. They're trying to make these people happy. So in mind that you're a farmer, you have an elephant in your backyard, or a tiger, and you are panicking, you are very upset, you feel no one helps you, you go to the government will come, they need to do something. They need to show that they care for people. And what they do is things like this. It's like a cowboy show. You have 30 people coming out from a truck, and they come, and then they tackle the elephant. It's very spectacular. Everyone feels, oh, this is, the government cares for me. They're doing something that is really helping me, or they're making an effort to help me, when actually what they're doing is trying to get people less angry for a short term. So then if we want to conserve elephants in the 21st century, or tigers, or any of these kind of large, dangerous animals, we need to start to think seriously about sharing landscape with them. And we don't know how to do it. So then it's very easy to say we had to do this. We have very few success stories. So then my goal today is, I'm not going to have a final kind of conclusions. I just want to say, if we are serious about conserving these guys, we need to live with the conflict, and we need to really find a way to share landscapes. And we need to start now to have success stories that we can replicate, because otherwise we're not doing a very good job. And I like what Larry said today about the chess. That was a very nice thing. We need to think ahead. We know that how things, business as usual, is gonna wipe out the tigers. It's gonna wipe out all the big animals from, at least from Southeast Asia where I work. But something I have learned a lot is when you deal with decision makers, you deal with people who have done things for a long time in the same way. Often, I have been in meetings in the capital city, in a very fancy meeting room with very smart people, very well educated. We agree to do something, but nothing happens, nothing changes, never changes, because we are just agreeing with a few people, but we need to really change the system. That involves changing the way that people think, across from the top to the middle range, to those who do things on the ground, those guys who go and capture the elephant. We have to tell them, listen, we don't move elephants because it is not a good idea, it doesn't work. We need to provide them alternatives, but also we need to understand that changing people's mindsets takes time. So when I always think about the Titanic, it's very easy to think, okay, let's change our policy, but you cannot turn suddenly 90 degrees. It's not going to work. So if you want to be here, you need to plan ahead and say, okay, I need 10 years, 5 years, 15 years to change the way people think, to provide them other kind of normal options. You cannot just impose things that they don't understand, that they don't buy in. And buying in is not just a white paper that everyone has agreed in a room and signed. So then we need to be realistic. We shouldn't be naive in our expectations in the way we mitigate these things. And something that I want to link with what Christian was saying, that we need to talk to other people. You guys, you're on the same page that I am. We agree, it's fine. Let's go and talk to other people, because people don't understand that this is happening. People in Malaysia don't know they have elephants. They know more about elephants in Kenya than they know about elephants in Malaysia, because they are detached from nature. And then for them, it's not an issue. For the policymakers, it's really not much of an issue. Just they don't want to have people angry. So with this, with the Titanic, the chess, and talking to other people, I will finish and some time for questions.